In the middle of the Pacific Ocean, there lies a place called the Micronesian Islands. Within these islands are 4 major island groups, of which 3 are relevant because today we're only going to look within the Caroline Islands, in a place called Nukuoro Atoll.
You may recognize this area by the terracotta fragments we learned about earlier in this course. As you can recall, the peoples of this area were seafarers, and distinctive but connected cultures flourished on the islands.
It is said that the peoples of Nukuoro had come from the Samoan archipelago, and, led by their chief Wawe, traveled by canoe to the then uninhabited island. Although it is located in Micronesia, Nukuoro shares much of its culture and language with Polynesia, and is considered a Polynesian outlier.
Now, before we get into the details of the female deity, there is some religious background you should know about Micronesia. The people are thought to have believed in local spirits, household ancestors, and major island deities. And, as shown by the people's love for seafaring and adventure, religious practices reflected the idea of controlling the precarious nature of society and the physical world.
Much like other cultures, they concerned themselves with the fertility of the land, and their environmental influences showed greatly through their worries about the sea. Houses contained shrines, and they believed in certain spirits for different aspects of life.
As for their religious art, the Micronesian peoples did not care for pomp and circumstance, and settled with humble, less flashy figures, as you can see with our female deity here.
You see, a slightly long time ago, circa the 18th to 19th century, the Micronesian peoples of Nukuoro crafted religious sculptures called Tino Aitu, or Dinonga Edu.
They were named after deities associated with maybe a priest, temple, or an extended family group. We don't know exactly what this little lady's name is, but we definitely know that she was probably placed in a temple and decorated like a little lady should be.
Our deity is pretty representative of Nukuoro's statues. She, like many other statues, was once adorned with loom-woven bands, fine mats, feathers, paint, or headdresses. She was made from the wood of a breadfruit tree, as most sculptures of Nukuoro were. With these decorations, she undoubtedly reflected the culture of the Micronesians. Loom-woven bands and fine mats in particular showcased their origin to the Caroline Islands, as loom weaving was unique to the area and held distinctive forms and functions within Nukuoro society. Her decor even displays status, as Micronesian arts usually did. After all, the usage of personal ornamentation was used very symbolically in Micronesian art and society.
She also exemplifies many traits of the typical Micronesian sculpture. An oval-like head, a tapered chin and long neck, slight slits for eyes, shoulders that stoop downwards, a chest indicated by a line, a nice, flat butt, flexed legs, and an overall highly stylized shape unrealistic to the regular human form. She is symmetrical, which is a very distinct motif that the Micronesian peoples emphasized.
In fact, symmetry was present in Micronesian arts, measurement, tattoo designs, houses, and their beloved canoe construction.
And, due to the beach nearby, pumice stones were available to polish the surface of the statues.
These statues were anywhere from 30 to 217 centimeters in height, with disproportionate body parts and an ambiguously detailed physique. This choice in design may represent the idea of a blank canvas for which spirits could inhabit.
Now, where would our little lady have been? Well, these statues could have been placed in either a private or public area, as each of the founding clans had their own god figures in a little place called the Spirit House. Major deities were housed in a public spirit house for everyone to visit.
Not only did these statues reside peacefully in their home temples, they participated in an important religious ceremony marking the beginning of the harvest, in which newly harvested food would be brought to the figures. Their crops included 2 kinds of taro, breadfruit, arrowroot, banana, sugarcane, pandanus, and coconuts. At the time of these rituals, they represented the resting place of a god or a deified ancestor.
It was certainly a fun time for the sculptors, as they were given food offerings and enjoyed the dances involved in festivities. Women were even tattooed.
But, much like everything else in this world, the statues could rot and reach an end to their enjoyable time as a deity. In the midst of the rituals, the older ones are replaced with the newer, more hip statues. Now, what else does this remind you of?
Personally, this little deity of ours reminds me of the votive figures at Eshnuna. You see, like the figures at Eshnuna, the deity sculpture represented a holding place for a spirit, whereas the votive figures held a place for their owner, the churchgoer.
Ah, yes. Both were public items, most commonly placed in temples and places of worship, and both wished to receive from their respective religions.
What do you mean by receive?
Well, the votive figures received blessings granted by gods, whereas the deity figures were meant to receive harvested food during rituals.
They also represent the idea of eternity. Votive figures represent worship carried into the afterlife, as the deity figures represent worship to not only the afterlife but ancestors as well.
Contextually, the two hold many similarities. However, there are definitely differences in form, as the votive figures prove more proportionate and realistic to the human shape than the female deity. Nonetheless, the two hold many similarities as religious sculptures that will later influence the views of the first forms of arts. Now, you may be thinking, there's something missing that we haven't covered just yet. Well, that's because I haven't told you about how we, the West, got hold of these sculptures. After all, the Western Europeans always got a butt into everybody's business. In 1806, Nuquoro was found by the Spanish navigator Juan Bautista Monteverde while traveling from Manila, Philippines to Lima in South America. The Nuquoro peoples had began trade with Europeans at around 1830, as Western tools had appeared to arrive on the islands. Protestant missionaries had come to the area by around 1850, and in 1902, an American missionary by the name of Thomas Gary found that a lot of Nuquoro people already knew about Christianity. He even found, 3 years later, that a church stood on the sacred ground that the peoples once treasured. Fast forward 8 years after that, in 1913, a lot of the pre-Christian traditions such as dances, songs, and stories were already lost. As for the Europeans who quote-unquote discovered these sculptures, I'll list them on the screen for your viewing purposes. It's amazing to think a culture that flourished on an island since the 8th century was transformed in so little time by the ambitious Europeans. Now, it would be a shame to end on this note, so sit back and enjoy as we recap this information in the form of a song.
The female deity of the Nuquoro was a part of many others that looked just like a doll, but were actually sculptures called Tino Aitu, which are spirits who inhabited figures made of wood.
These sculptures were used in the month Matariki, when the stars appear west and mark the start of harvesting fruit like arrowroot, banana, sugar cane, and coconut, but most importantly breadfruit, of which the figures were made of.
The sculptures were named after certain deities or ancestors associated with a priest or family, and the figures were placed in public or in temples to be worshipped by many during harvest rituals.